Hi, and thanks for joining us for Deprogram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. We're pre-recording this in order to accommodate our guest schedule. Our guest is Jake Tapper of CNN. He's the author of Race Against Terror. Let me put this up.
There it is.
There it is. Chasing an Al Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War. So, Jake, thanks again for joining us once again here on Deprogram. It's great to see you. A little bit of housekeeping. We're here Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Please like, follow, and share the show. Please comment. This particular show will not be able to answer your questions in the live feed because obviously it's pre-recorded. So that's not a problem for us. So anyway, Jake, let's get into it.
Let's disclose. First of all, we should disclose John's in the book. I interviewed him for the book. I cited one of his books in the resource materials because the book is not just about this true crime story about this killer. It's also the subtext is about the legal and ethical ways to go after terrorists, and that's where John comes in his CIA role. Sorry to interrupt.
You're why we're here. So, Jake, tell us a little bit about Spin Ghul and how you got interested in this story, and tell us, what the deal is. Why is he important?
So, the way I got interested in the story was just I was at my son's paintball birthday party, and because it's so far out in the middle of rural Virginia, I just host parents, so they only have to make the drive there and back. They don't have to go there and back, then there and back. So I was having pizza and drinks and whatever. And one of the dads came over to me and said that he knew Dave Roller, who's one of the protagonists of my book about Afghanistan, The Outpost. And I said, oh yeah, that book was really difficult to write because the Pentagon keeps such bad records and they also are just so reluctant to share them. And he said, tell me about it. And then he tells me this story that starts with him as an assistant U.S. attorney in 2011, gets a phone call from the FBI. And this guy who identified himself as an Al Qaeda terrorist had just been picked up on an Italian cruise ship. Berlusconi had commandeered cruise ships. There was this refugee crisis during the Arab Spring because the southern Italian islands are closer to Africa than they are to Rome. So all these Tunisians and Libyans were swamping these islands, doubling and tripling the population in weeks. And so Berlusconi was taking all these refugees to the mainland, and somehow this Al Qaeda operative ended up there. And the Italians had him in custody, and they could hold him for a little bit because they had to sedate him on board once they interrogated him. But they couldn't hold him forever. He hadn't done anything to them. But he was confessing to having killed Americans in Afghanistan, having tried to blow up the U.S. embassy in Nigeria. And they said, do you want him? Have you heard of him? And the Americans had. So the Americans went over to Italy and listened to his confession in a courtroom. He was proud of his work as a terrorist. And then the clock was ticking because the Italians didn't want him, didn't want to hold him. They were just going to put him in a refugee camp where he could easily walk out and then do what he wanted to do, which was kill as many Americans as possible. And
weren't the Italians worried that he might decide to kill Italians?
Not particularly. They at this point, he was just a madman who claimed to be an Al Qaeda. They didn't know that he was legit. They didn't know that he actually posed a serious threat. They didn't have any plans to go after him. And at this point in the global war on terror, the GWAT, the Italians were, like a lot of Europe, completely fed up with the United States, didn't trust us, didn't like what we were doing.
This is 8 years into the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah. And also, there was an Egyptian cleric who had been basically kidnapped. I mean, it's called extraordinary rendition, but basically kidnapped off the streets of Italy and by the Americans working with some people in the Italian government. And a bunch of these CIA operatives and military operatives had been tried in absentia in Italy. So there was a lot. They didn't, particularly care that Obama was in charge, not Bush. It was just still the United States. And they were just like, just get it. If you want them, take them. If not, we're just, this so long we can hold them. So the Americans had to prove a case. They had to take his story because any second-year law student would be able to get this thrown out. They'd say, you have no proof this happened. This is just a crazy man claiming he did this. We don't even, know who he killed. This is not a case. So the Americans had to build a case with this ticking clock to bring him to justice. And so it's the sleuthing that really the book is about. And that's what was so interesting when Dave Bitcower, my son's friend's dad, who's also one of the protagonists in this book, told me this story, because it was just so interesting, the sleuthing, how they proved the case. And in terms of, I wrote it like a thriller. I tried to make it just as compelling a read as possible. But for your very smart and very informed listeners and viewers, I think it's also important because it shows how Obama tried to prosecute the war on terror, at least in this chapter of it, not drones or whatever, but in this, when it comes to prosecuting terrorists, in a way that he felt worked with our ideals, lived up to what the promise of America is. And at the time, as you may remember,
sorry to interrupt, but
2011, 2012, Obama was trying to try terrorists in the United States. Mm-hmm. And politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, were acting like if you bring a terrorist to the United States, that he's like Thanos. He has like superhuman power. He's going to break out of prison. He's going to kill everybody.
Yes.
There was this, people were, and that's why they call it terrorism, because people were terrified of these guys coming to the United States. And there was also the real fear that if he was found not guilty, that who knows what would happen to him. Does that mean he just like gets to walk the streets of Brooklyn? We know he intends to commit mass murder. Mm-hmm. So that part of it might be of interest for you two, since I know of your, obviously I respect your work and your criticism of how the war on terror has been conducted by every administration. But that is also an interesting subtext of it. And John's story is interesting because there is evidence that the Americans are able to use against Spin Ghul that came from an FBI /CIA /Pakistani raid when they picked up Abu Zubaydah. And Abu Zubaydah was kind of like a go-between. He wasn't really officially Al Qaeda, but he did stuff for terrorists in that area. And when the FBI was in charge of the case before John swept in, they got all this evidence. But then everything that happened, I'm not blaming this on John, but everything that happened to Abu Zubaydah once that plane went off to the CIA black site, none of that was admissible ever again because of enhanced interrogation / torture. But that part before the CIA got involved, when the FBI was still like doing things by the book, quote unquote, there was evidence in the Abu Zubaydah raid that later came in handy when they were prosecuting Spin Ghul. So it's just kind of like a demarcation of what you can use in a court of law and lock these guys away forever in a legal way, and what you can't. And then you're faced with how do you solve a problem like Maria at Gitmo?
Jake, two questions. Is it fair to say that if these events had transpired in, say, 2005?
I don't know what's going on.
Sorry, Jake, do you hear me?
Can one of you talk to me?
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
I just lost you guys.
Oh, that's
hold on
strange.
Yeah.
Test. 1, 2, 3. Now you're muted, Jake. You are muted. Jake, look at the bottom of your. Look, maybe unmute yourself at the bottom left. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, do you hear us?
I can't hear you.
Oh.
So I am going to turn off.
Test. If you have to use the regular.
It turned off Yeti Nano. Good thing we're pre-taping. Can you talk to me now?
Test. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
I don't know what's wrong. Let me get out and call back in. I'm sorry.
Okay. Always stuff like that.
Right? Always. But he's right. It's good that we're pre-taping.
Yeah, we can edit this out. This is in fact, I should write down the timestamp on this. Okay, there's Jake. Let me
It works. I can hear you again. I don't know.
Okay, great.
No idea what happened, but I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry, Jake. I'll just edit that out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, so I was going to ask you a couple of questions. Is it fair to say that if these events had transpired at the peak of the Bush administration, like say 2005, that probably they would have just sent the guy to Guantanamo Bay.
I think 100%. Yes. And let me also say, probably what would have happened is they would have sent him to Guantanamo Bay, and then ultimately, whether Obama or Bush or Biden or Trump, at some point, somebody would have said, we don't have any evidence on this guy. We can't hold him. It doesn't make any sense. And they would have sent him to Saudi Arabia or Niger or whatever. And then perhaps he would have gone and killed a bunch of people. I mean, that's the thing, because they didn't have any evidence when the Americans first got him or were first told about him. Probably, I mean, it's just also like the investigation actually also served the purposes of the safety of the American people and Westerners all over the world, more than just the throw him in Gitmo thing, because ultimately there was never any evidence that the Americans had until they started this investigation.
Yeah. And my other question is, he's Afghan, right? I mean, so
no, he was from.
Oh, he's not?
He was from Saudi Arabia. He was Nigerian by blood, and then he was recruited by a jihadist recruiter in Saudi Arabia, and then went to Pakistan, and then killed Americans in Afghanistan. But it's the first time in American history that a foreign terrorist was tried in a U.S. criminal court for killing service members in a battle zone, in a war zone. That had never happened before. And whether or not Trump knows it, he is about to follow in those footsteps, because they are doing the same thing in the criminal prosecution of this guy, Jafar, who was one of the one of the guys who conspired to kill Americans and Afghans at the Abbey Gate killing in 2021. He is now in a Virginia jail awaiting trial. And I mean, it's just amazing to me, because, when you read this book and you follow the history of it, like, it was considered weak. It was considered lame to bring these terrorists to the United States to try them criminally. Why do you want to give them rights? Why do you want to put them on trial, et cetera, et cetera? Just, and Trump, who I think probably thinks of himself as having a very different approach to the war on terror as Obama, is literally doing something that Obama paved the path to do. And, and I think we're going to be better off for it. This guy will be tried in a court of law and I'm sure locked up forever.
So this is a tough question, right? But I mean, if Spin Ghul is killing U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, would it be fair could he have a defense in saying, like, look, I'm a resistance fighter.
100%. Yeah.
The American soldiers are occupation forces.
Yeah.
The Afghans don't want them there.
There was that was the big fear of the prosecutors, that the defense would be allowed to bring that defense, that this is a foreign, this is a terrorist, or I'm sorry, this is resistance.
It's not terrorism.
It's not, and all is fair in love and war. And in fact, the family of one of the two Americans killed in the ambush, the family of Jared Dennis, asked prosecutors that too. Like, how is this illegal? Is it illegal for Al Qaeda to kill Americans in Afghanistan? Is that against the law? Right. And there's a guy named, I think his name is Dave Fracht. I think he's a lieutenant colonel. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a really interesting guy. Mm-hmm. Dave Fracht, who has represented people at Gitmo, he was brought in by the defense to offer that theory. Like, this guy should not be prosecuted for killing Americans on a battlefield. He's the enemy, and this is, and ultimately the judge does not let that argument into the court. But we have a whole chapter on that subject, because that's what I wondered too. How is it illegal? I mean, and Dave Fracht.
It's like the Johnny Walker Lynch case is so strange, right? I mean, the guy goes to prison for nearly 20 years for carrying an AK-47 in Afghanistan, right? Like, not in the United States, I mean, Afghanistan has as many AK-47s as it has cups of coffee. I mean, they're all over the place. How is that illegal in the United States anyway?
And he had joined the Taliban before 9/11 also.
Right.
The thing
Yeah, he wasn't a traitor to his country.
And one of the dirty little secrets about that case is that he was never read his rights. That's right? That's why DOJ was so anxious to come to some sort of a plea agreement.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, John Walker Lind is mentioned in the book too. Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of interesting. That's one of the other things that was, for me, fun to write this book, was exploring all these questions. And look, everybody in this book.
Yeah, what's American jurisdiction, right? That's
right. 100%. And everybody in this book, in my view, all the Americans in this book are patriots. They all play very different roles. There's FBI, there's Assistant U.S. attorneys, U.S. attorneys, et cetera. But there's also the defense attorneys, Dave Fracht, who wanted to be a witness, Jess Ganim, who's this psychiatrist who also works with a lot of Gitmo people and wanted to testify that Spin Ghul was not sane, was not competent to stand trial. And they're all doing what they need to do to uphold the ideals of this country and provide a fair trial. Now, you can disagree with the judge's decisions in terms of what he allowed and what he didn't allow. And there's certainly an argument that the defense believes that they didn't really get to provide the best defense because the judge would not let them do that, would not let them present the Dave Fracht like he was operating as an enemy soldier. But these juries do actually pay very close attention. One of the things that's really interesting, I didn't pay a lot of attention to at the time. I'm sure John did. Maybe you did too, Ted. There was a case in 2010. This also made all the politicians terrified, where this guy named Galani was tried for, I think it was participating in the 1998 embassy bombing. Yeah. And during that trial, the best witness, the judge threw him out because they learned about the witness through somebody being tortured. And so the judge threw it out entirely. And so the prosecution was left with not much. And the jury acquitted Galani of 284 out of 285 charges. Juries are paying a lot of attention. I think we don't give juries enough credit sometimes, but they were paying a lot of attention. And I think that they also, my guess is that they sentenced him to that. They found him guilty on that one charge because they knew he was guilty of and they didn't want to let him walk free. But but that case and that jury verdict sent a chill throughout the national security apparatus of this country about like the possibility of prosecuting these people and what could go wrong. So anyway, it's all just, to me, and I would think for you guys also, just like, this is just all so interesting. Whatever you think about it, wherever you come down on it policy wise. And I tried to write it honestly as with as little, other than I'm not a big fan of torture. Other than that, I'm kind of like, I try to be as agnostic as possible about the choices being made and who was right and who was wrong. And I hand the microphone over to the defense attorneys. I hand the microphone over to Dave Fracht. I just find it all so interesting. You guys, I don't tell you guys have devoted your lives to it in many ways.
I wanted to ask you, Jake, in the course of your research, in the course of your interviewing of people involved, especially from the DOJ side, did you detect any lingering animosity toward the CIA for demanding the right, the ability to torture these people? We knew back in 2002 that once we started torturing these people, nothing that they said would have been admissible in a court of law. And still the decision was made to go forward. Now, of course, the final decision was made at the White House.
Right.
It was the CIA's idea as early as October, November of 2001. Have DOJ people, White House people, even CIA people finally come around to the conclusion that this was a mistake and that over the long term, it actually did more damage to the country?
I think that that's kind of just an assumption because we're so, we're more than 20 years past those decisions being made.
Good.
I think people, I think people have come to that point of view. I don't think there's resentment, though. I think it's an understanding that these are the decisions that were made at the time.
Fog of war.
And whatever you think of Bush and Cheney, I think it's hard to argue that they were doing this other than for the reason that they thought this was the best way to protect the American people at that time, and maybe it didn't age so well and all that. But it was really just more matter of fact because most of the people that I'm interviewing here were not elected officials.
Right.
They were line prosecutors, FBI agents, and the like. And it's basically like whoever is the president, they have to do their job. However, the rules change, they have to change according to those rules. I think Bitcower and Shreve, for the two main assistant U.S. attorneys that are the main characters in the book, I think their basic philosophy is that, that the Bush administration, there were excesses. Maybe Obama was a little naive, but it didn't matter because they were just trying to do their job. And I think the FBI agents were the same way. It was really interesting to me, though, also in this story, the American mosaic of who is in the American security apparatus, because it isn't. No offense to white guys, because I'm one and you are too, but it isn't just a bunch of white guys, right? I mean, it really is truly the American mosaic. Two of the FBI agents, the main two FBI agents in the book, two of the three main FBI agents in the book are women and Muslims. Both of them are Muslims, and proudly so. They don't think they think of Al Qaeda as a twisted terrorist group. It has nothing to do with their religion other than they're twisting their religion. But that was really interesting. There's another guy, Bert Lacroix, who is a Caribbean, and he's an immigrant. He's American by choice. I mean, so it's just a lot. You really can't help but feel patriotic about this country when you meet this cast of characters, just because it's the gamut from the hail fellow, well met, Virginian, Shreve Ariel, to the wiry Jewish guy from New York. He's a Jeopardy champion, Dave Bitcower, to like these line prosecutors and it's just really, it's really interesting. And all of them, I think at this point, and remember, like a lot of them also are young enough that the soldiers that were in the ambush in 2003, they had all joined before 9/11, right? So that's a whole other thing. And they're amazing too. Like those guys telling me the story of the worst day of their lives when 2 of them were killed and 4 of them were seriously wounded. Just an incredible array of folk. But most of the people are young enough that like they joined law enforcement after 9/11 as a conscious decision. I want to do this to help protect Americans, and that was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Jake, I'm wondering about the political timing. I mean, obviously, the DOJ wasn't as directly controlled by the White House as it is today.
I think that's fair to say.
That said, it's 2011, right? And I mean, in 2010, I went to Afghanistan to write a book because Obama had just announced that we were going to withdraw from Afghanistan. Now, that didn't really happen for another 10 years, but we thought Americans were told at that point, this is the beginning of the end of America's presence in Afghanistan. We're not going to be there anymore. This is over. And that's why I wanted to go back and see how things have changed during the U.S. occupation. They basically, psychologically, the administration has kind of decided to move on to a new chapter. And think about other priorities domestically and internationally. Did this kind of was this viewed as this is like leftover from this experience that we're now trying to move past? Was it politically inconvenient for them? Or was it did it serve as like a bookend?
I think I don't think it was politically inconvenient. I think it was a challenge for the people tasked with having Obama's ideals become actual policy. Remember, Obama came in and he said he was going to close Gitmo. Gitmo's still open today, right now.
Bitcower immediately forgave the torturers, right? He immediately went to Langley, like day 1 or day 2, and said, "Don't worry, you guys are good."
And there was a degree to which this was part of a new chapter, I think, of we're going to be prosecuting the war and terror differently than Bush did, he said. But also keep in mind, when Obama took office, the terrorist threat had changed to a largely homegrown terrorist threat. I don't just mean right-wing terrorism. I mean, Al Qaeda inspired and ISIS ultimately inspired Americans. And so the idea of doing these cases in a criminal court of law became necessary. I think that is part of it. But look, I mean, I think that Obama's ideals often were very strongly confronted by reality, that it wasn't as easy to do the things he said he wanted to do. Like, for instance, when he set up his Gitmo task force, that the two heroes of the book, Bitcower and Stream, served on that Gitmo task force before they joined the Eastern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office. And, the conclusion there was, Obama wanted to close Gitmo. And the conclusion there was, okay, these guys we can prosecute either in a military commission or in a court of law. These guys we can either free or send to other countries. And these guys, we can't do anything with them. We have to keep Gitmo open. They're too dangerous to let go. And they've been tortured too much for us to prosecute them. And that was an ugly Obama he could have overruled it. He could have said, no, we're going to send them abroad or whatever. But he wasn't going to do that.
And the irony now is that they're all old men anyway.
Yeah.
I was just telling a friend of mine last night that in my mind, that raid to capture Abu Zubaydah was, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
In fact, I was 38 years old at the time. He was like 27, and now he's in his 50s.
Yeah.
And I'm in my 60s.
Yeah. So they're all like old and withered, and
yes,
a lot of them have real physical problems, either from the torture or from living in a prison for 30 years,
or just being old,
right.
Or just being old, right? We've seen that happen to other people of note as well. It's why, I mean, you could theoretically, I'm not going to call for it, but you could theoretically say, okay, we can close Gitmo now, and I don't know why. I honestly don't know why they haven't. I guess I do, but you could just give them to Pakistan and just give Pakistan $1 billion a year, whatever the price of Gitmo is. Yeah. Just take that money and subtract $10 from it and give it to Pakistan and just put them in a prison, whatever. But there's always the fear that some roving band of terrorists will come in and free them. And, but this isn't Con Air. They're all old men who probably just want to sit down and have a lemonade,
Yeah.
I mean, they're horrible people.
Not to mention Al Qaeda is really no more.
Yeah.
Is it? Is it no more?
Not core Al Qaeda. I wanted to ask you about, I've heard rumors that the Biden administration actually had come to an agreement to release Abu Zubaydah.
Oh, is that right?
Well, the reason that they didn't was they were in the process of trying to find a country willing to take him, and they couldn't find a country willing to take him. We've foisted, I should say, terrorists on countries from Switzerland to Tahiti to Albania to the Philippines, Bermuda, and they just hadn't found a country to take him. And so at least 4 more years now are going to pass before those conversations can take place again. Did you pick anything like that up in your conversations at
it's news to me. The only thing I know about Biden and terrorists, I think we talked about last time with my Biden book, which was there were 11 Yemenis that they wanted to free. And they ultimately did free them right before Biden left office. But they wanted to free him in October 2023, right after Hamas attacked Israel. And all the senators on the Intelligence Committee got wind of this, Democrats and Republicans, and said, you can't do that. These guys will go and join Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis or whatever. You cannot do this. And when Senator Mark Warner expressed this concern to Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, and then Biden called Warner And Warner was very disturbed by the conversation because he didn't think Biden had any idea of what was going on. So that's the only thing I know about that. And then ultimately they did just like send them to Oman or whatever. And it's so interesting because these guys, these terrorists, like it's a calling for them. And we get into this in the book. I get into this in the book about like their belief system and the zealotry and all that. And where does zealotry end and insanity begin for any zealotry, by the way, not just this zealotry, but for any zealotry. And like, I don't doubt that a lot of these guys have rejoined. I mean, I know it's been proven for some of them, but like, I don't doubt that a lot of these freed guys have rejoined the battle against the West. That's their life's calling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I'm against it, just to make sure. I don't want anyone out there like I'm against it. But let me tell you something. It's interesting. You'll appreciate this because I think you guys are both sports fans. So Bidkower, when he was at Yale, I didn't get to put this in the book because the editor thought it was too glib a story. But Bidkower, people say, why did Spin Ghul confess in those early days? Why? I mean, one of the answers is I think because he had been in a Libyan prison for 5 or 6 years and he had just gone mad and he was just like eager to tell his story or whatever. But the other one is about like his pride in being a terrorist. And when Bidkower was at Yale, he interviewed Ron Darling, who is a legendary pitcher with the New York Mets, who had gone to Yale and had pitched a no-hitter at Yale. And Bidkower interviewed him. Bidkower interviewed him about that no-hitter. And he didn't know what to expect when he interviewed Ron Darling because this guy he's got a World Series ring with the Mets in '86. But Ron Darling remembered every single second of that day from when he was in college. And Bidkower said that was like Spin Ghul confessing. This was the greatest achievements of his life. He ambushed Americans and killed Americans. He went to Nigeria, tried to blow up the embassy there. This is his life's work. He's proud of it, and he remembered every detail, and he wanted to share it the same way a 90-year-old Mickey Mantle would want to share any story with anybody who would listen.
Wouldn't that kind of indicate that he was done, though? Because I mean, if he wanted to return to the fight, wanted to return to the battle, wouldn't he have shut the fuck up once he fell into custody and tried to just con his way into freedom so that he could rejoin? I mean, blabbing seems like, okay, well now, they're never letting you go.
Well, I think I think he knew that they were never letting him go. He was demanding that he be brought before The Hague, that he be brought before Kofi Annan. He was he wasn't thinking particularly clearly, but you'll enjoy this. So at some point he stops talking, stops cooperating, just clams up and starts acting crazy. And there is a whole debate. Is he actually crazy or is he just acting crazy? And one of the terms I learned from writing this book was there's this thing where captured terrorists stop cooperating because it's the only thing they have left. It is the only power they have left against the Americans or against the Westerners, is to be as difficult as possible.
Obstinate.
And it's called the jihad of annoyance. And it's all, which by the way,
a book title.
I feel like I experience it several times a day here in Washington, D.C. A lot of people for performing that jihad on me, but it's the jihad of annoyance where they're just like, I'm not going to cooperate. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to take a crap in my pants. Like just whatever they can do, the jihad of annoyance. And ultimately the judge has to decide, is this guy crazy or is this the jihad of annoyance? Which I just thought was you can have it, Ted, for your next book.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm taking it. Yeah. No, I've suffered the jihad of annoyance and I've deployed the jihad of annoyance many times.
I think I just did it to my wife.
It's kind of my job.
That's right. As a cartoonist. Absolutely.
That's what Abu Zubaydah did too. He did it twice. Every time the CIA started to torture him, he would just go silent, and he would stay silent until Ali Soufan from the FBI returned and reestablished that rapport and got him comfortable again and gave him an orange and gave him a piece of paper to write to his mother. And then he would start talking again.
Let me ask you a question, John, because I've always wondered about this when it comes to getting terrorists to cooperate. Because I'm sure I'm sure I'm not the only one it's occurred to. But taking the Ali Soufan approach even one step further, like beyond the torture is wrong debate. I mean, what about like showing somebody a cell, like a prison cell, here's a cod and whatever, and you are caught forever. You're never getting out of custody ever. You have two choices. It is this, and you show them like basically a hotel room where they have cable and they have, a luxury bathroom or whatever, even just a Holiday Inn. I mean, it's kind of sweet. And say, this is your choice. If you cooperate with us, you get this, and this will be your life for the rest of your life, or whatever. Like, would that have worked? Was that approach ever tried? I mean, I know these black sites didn't exactly have that luxury.
Never even considered it. But that's what a normal human being would do. It was always my experience, Jake, and I mean like always my experience, that playing the good cop worked. 90% of these guys were willing to sit and talk to you. You didn't have to torture them. You didn't have to beat them. You didn't have to threaten their families or their children or whatever. They would talk to you eventually. The very first prisoner I ever caught was a Jordanian. He had just come across the border from Afghanistan, and we caught him in an Al Qaeda safe house. And they brought him into the interrogation room. He was chained to an eye bolt in the table. And I gave him a name. It wasn't my real name. I don't even remember what it was. And I started speaking to him like a normal person. Right. And he began answering my questions. And one of the things we were interested in early on was what we called the rat lines, the paths that they took from Afghanistan to Pakistan. We wanted to be able to bottle them up. I put a map of Afghanistan, of the border in front of him. And sure enough, he pointed out, I went here and I went there, and there's a village here, and this guy helped me in the village, and his wife gave me some food. And at the end of it all, I said to him, do you mind if I ask you one final question? I said, you didn't have to answer any of my questions today. Why did you? And he said, because you've treated me with respect.
Yeah.
And it was really as simple as that. So sure, if you show these guys a concrete cell with a little steel toilet and a concrete bed with no mattress and no pillow, and then you show them the Motel 6 and say, you get the Motel 6 if you talk to me and you tell me the truth, 90 times out of 100, they're going to tell you what you want to know and take the Motel 6.
Because is the Motel 6 a credible offer, though? I mean, is that something the U.S. government could provide, that style of accommodation?
It would take 2 weeks to order cots into Guantanamo and a decent pillow and maybe, a loop of Arabic language movies or something on the communal TV. Sure, they could have done it if they wanted to.
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I've learned while writing this book is I don't know what percentage of these people are actual zealots. I think Spin Ghul was an actual zealot.
Absolutely.
And how many of them are, I mean, I hate to use a cliche, but lost, disaffected young men. And this is the same kind of psychos we see in the United States who resort to violence and kill Charlie Kirk or whatever. And and they're just missionless. They feel whatever. And again, not sympathetic to them, but once you have them in custody, if they're not actually some of the experts I talked to while writing this book said most of these guys are not actually devout Muslims. Even in the twisted version of Muslim.
I only met 2 or 3.
Yeah.
The rest were they were illiterate, unemployable kids, 18, 19 years old, who wanted to get married, but no father would let his daughter marry some kid who can't read and can't write and can't work because he doesn't have any job skills. And then the local imam approached them and said, listen, you don't want to stay in this village. You should go to Afghanistan and make jihad against the Americans. And if you do that, we'll give you $300 a month. And if you're martyred, we'll give your family a $500 martyrdom bonus.
Yeah.
These guys couldn't find the United States on a map and had never read the Quran.
So Spin Ghul, one of the things that I really liked about writing this book was because Spin Ghul had that period where he was very chatty and told his story. We have his story in the book. I have his story in the book from childhood to the rat line.
Wow.
And one of the things that's interesting, so his parents are from Niger. They are basically indentured servants in Saudi Arabia. So he, and you think there's racism in the United States, try going to Saudi Arabia and seeing how they treat how they treat Africans there. And then, there's basically no future for him. And, he's raised in the 90s where jihadists are, they just scored a huge victory in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
They are fighting against the oppression of Putin in Chechnya.
Mm-hmm.
They're the victims, Muslims, not jihadists, but Muslims are the victims in the Balkans.
And in China, right? The Uyghurs.
Oh, yeah. And so these are his, and the jihadists they're war heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And like, by the way, not only in the Muslim world. I mean, the United States was arming the jihadists, as we all know. So he's raised in this world, and again, he joined the jihad before 9/11, and then he gets recruited, by a local hero, a local legend who works for the government, and next thing you know, he's at one of Al Farouk terrorist training camp in I forget if that's in Pakistan or Afghanistan, and like learning how to do this stuff. And by the way, Spin Ghul is a racist nickname because he's very, very black from Niger, and it means white rose in Pashto. So that was like the nickname that the jihadists gave him was White Rose because he's super black. I mean, like, again,
that's funny. There's a sense of humor. There's a great book. I wonder if you guys are familiar, called Inside the Jihad, written by a British guy who attended one of the training camps in Afghanistan. He spent 3 months, and he didn't end up becoming a jihadi at all, but he just talked about the experience of training. And it sounded kind of like, Outward Bound on steroids. It actually sounded, except for the religious aspect to me, like it would have been a great, incredibly meaningful experience. They had to survive off the land for 30 days. They're dropped in the middle of the mountains in eastern Afghanistan, like live, or don't, or whatever. So you become incredibly tough, resilient. They learn about weapons. They get physically tough. It's taxing. It's psychologically testing. I'm just like, I could see the appeal for these guys who had nothing else going on in their lives.
I think most 17, 18-year-old boys, if you put them in a camp like that, again, remove the religion from it and remove like we're going to go kill a bunch of innocent people from it, but just the experience of, oh, look at your cat there. What's his name or her name?
Clovis.
Oh, great.
Named after the first king of France.
Very nice. Well, I have a cat, but she's not here right now. Anyway, I don't know any 18-year-old boy. My son, for his birthday party, we did paintball for when he turned whatever that was, 13, and we're going to do airsoft this year. I mean, firing guns, learning about explosives, roughing it, hanging out with your bros. You're at an age, especially if you're, from an austere Islamic community where like girls aren't really part of your social world anyway. Right. You're bonding, you're meeting your heroes. I mean, again, nobody twist what I'm saying. I'm against jihad, but still, I mean, I could absolutely see the appeal, especially if you're meeting legendary people in, the world of jihad. And again, in 2000, the jihad, the United States had been funding some of this. We were rooting for the Muslims in the Balkans. We were arming the jihadists in the 80s in Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, we armed the jihadis in Syria against Assad. That's much more recent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So did you get the impression by the end of all this that things have really changed? Or are we flailing around on a case-by-case basis as to what to do with this accused jihadi, what to do with that accused jihadi?
I feel like we've kind of like settled in an almost consensus way of prosecuting the war on the so-called global war on terror, the GWAT, that is neither Bush nor Obama. Mm-hmm. That is kind of like that the U.S. government has kind of taken the part of Bush, like we're going to kill them over there so they don't kill us over here, that they do believe that, and that is part of the plan. Now Trump is expanding his use of that authority to go after Tren de Aragua and narco terrorists as well, which is, anytime a president gets a shiny new toy, the next president takes it and uses it. Like Obama increased drone strikes, I think 100-fold over what Bush did.
Yeah.
So there is that. There is, when I had Sebastian Gorka on to talk about terrorism, specifically because I wanted to ask him about Jafar, this guy that they're prosecuting, and I asked him about it. And I don't think that they have any memory that this was controversial at one point to like bring these people to the United States to try them. But he basically just said, and I'm going to spare you my Sebastian Gorka impression, but he basically said, we're going to use whatever we can use. And in this case, it was different because it was Pakistani intelligence working with the U.S., not the Italians. The Italians were able to say, we're not going to give Spin Ghul to you if you're going to send him to Gitmo, not that they would have anyway under Obama, and we're not going to give him to you if death penalty's on the table. The Italians were able to say that. I don't think the Pakistanis give a shit. But Gorka basically said, we'll just use whatever tools we have. But I thought it was a step in the right direction that the idea of prosecuting these folks in the United States is now just accepted as a tool. I think that that's progress because it's so much more effective than Gitmo. It's so much more effective than the military tribunals that are still struggling to even, prosecute.
KSM.
It's just crazy. And it does live up to American ideals. Now, judge at the end of the book, the judge confesses that he thought the whole exercise was kind of bizarre because it seemed like a show trial. Let's show the world that we can do this. In which he seemed, to him, Judge Kogan, it seemed a little silly because, you're Obama, you can do whatever you want. You can put him in Gitmo. You can send him to Saudi Arabia, whatever you want. But I do think that we are in a place when it comes to the prosecution of this, that it's more accepted. I think that's a good thing. And I think that the people that worked so hard on this case, and again, the case, even though we didn't spoil the book too much for anybody, but like the book is really about the sleuthing and about how they build the case. And I thought that was what was interesting to me when Bitcower told me the story, because I just love that comfort food of police procedurals on TV. I love CSI and Law and Order and Cold Case and Criminal Minds. I just love
stuff.
Yeah, and just like, they found, how did they get his fingerprint on the battlefield, like 15 years after the battle? Like, I mean, how did they do that? Like, and that's just really interesting. And the cast of characters is so interesting. The fingerprint expert is this woman with it's like she's right out of TV. She's got dyed red hair and a nose ring and tats up her neck, and like she works at Quantico, and it's just like, how are you real? How are you a real person, not a TV character? You're so interesting, and it's so that part of it was just so fun to me.
Let me ask you about some of the politics behind this here in the U.S. Like you, I remember as if it were yesterday how members of Congress in 2002, 2003, up to whenever, 2009, just simply would not permit any of these people into the United States to face trial. Like, we didn't have dangerous prisoners in American prisons.
Right.
We didn't have the blind sheikh.
People escape all the time from our prisons.
Yeah. The Unabomber never existed, or
right.
the Gary Allen Ridgway or whatever. You're intimating that seems to have passed, but has it passed to the point where Congress is finally willing to pass a law then allowing Gitmo prisoners to be tried in the United States?
Oh, no,
I didn't think so.
No, I don't think so. First of all, this Congress is the most compliant Congress I've ever seen. They are
unbelievable.
It's not. Yeah. And it's not Speaker Johnson's fault. It's just how Congress has evolved now. Congress doesn't declare war. Congress doesn't impose tariffs. Congress isn't upset when presidents just use executive authority to do things that they're not allowed to do, whether it's right. Biden or Trump. It doesn't matter. Like, they don't want skin in the game because then they get attack ads. No, I don't sense that at all. But I will say, I think a lot of the blowback in this era of 2011, 2012. And it wasn't just the Liz Cheneys and Dick Cheneys of the world. It was the Chuck Schumers of the world and the Jim Webbs of the world. And like nobody wanted these people in their state being prosecuted. I think they probably were to a large degree reacting to the terrified American people. And 10 years after 9/11, people were still very terrified. And the terrorist threat was very real. You had that Zazi guy out of Colorado who wanted to blow up the subways and all the rest.
Hey, I was on an ISIS death threat list. I had my own personal FBI agent. Remember the Garland, Texas cartoonist ISIS attack?
Oh, yes, of course.
Right? Two jihadis, self-radicalized ISIS dudes show up with AR-15 long guns at this Garland, Texas event, and they had private security. They were just off-duty cops who killed them before they could get in. I mean, but
had you drawn the Prophet Muhammad, or were you just at an event?
No. So this event was a right-wing, anti-Muslim event, right? And I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't invited.
Pam Geller?
It was Pam Geller.
Yeah.
And so it turns out that after this event, on some kind of ISIS discussion group, someone said, "Oh, too bad we didn't get to kill those American cartoonists. Who else is an American cartoonist we could kill?" So I came up on the short list of two. The other one's also a big lefty critic, cartoonist of the administration. And I was kind of like, you chose the two cartoonists who were probably your not ally, but you're certainly, we should have been at the bottom of your list, not at the top of your list. And it was like, you guys
Who was the other one? Who was the other?
You guys are stupid. I don't want to say because it could give people ideas.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, so we were, we had
what a wild era that was. Remember when Matt Stone and Trey Parker did the Muhammad episode of South Park, which you still can't watch.
Yeah.
Which you still cannot watch.
And don't forget also when the Danish Muhammad cartoons came out and they were the subject of all this discussion, no American newspaper like the New York Times or Washington Post would even publish the cartoon so we could know what we were talking about.
It's crazy. I remember I was at ABC News at the time, and I was trying to do pieces about it, and they wouldn't let us show the cartoons.
And it's like, it's a visual medium. It's hard to understand if you can't see it.
It's not. I assure you, it is not cultural sensitivity that made those decisions. It's terror of being attacked. Because they were killing cartoonists at the time. They were in Europe, and as I
lost 4 of my friends at Charlie Hebdo.
Is that right?
Wow.
Oh yeah. You know what's so interesting about the Charlie Hebdo situation? Just because it does relate to this book. So one of the fun things about it, or interesting things about it, was just like hearing these people's stories, and everybody has a different story, and everybody's story moves you in a different way. So Jared Dennis, I mentioned, was one of the soldiers killed in the Spin Ghul ambush. Native American kid from Oklahoma, from Antlers, Oklahoma, and his brother Renly is told that he can speak during sentencing. They have a thing called victim statements, or victims impact statements, where before the judge renders the verdict, renders the sentence. Victims can come forward and say, "This is how this criminal act affected me." So Renly, 2 of the soldiers speak and talk about, and these are soldiers that were not seriously wounded, but the ambush in 2003, like really affected their lives. One guy talks about his divorce and how he can't even see his family anymore because he's so traumatized by what happened, because he just, he let everybody down because these 2 guys were killed. It wasn't his fault at all, but whatever. Another guy talking about the time that his sisters confronted him because they were afraid of him. They thought he was so angry. Anyway, Renly Dennis speaks. Renly Dennis, in the previous months, had picked up a book at the Antlers Barnes & Noble called "You Cannot Have My Hate." "You Cannot Have My Hate" is written by a guy who lost his wife in the ISIS attack on the Bataclan. The same year as the Charlie Hebdo killings. Mm-hmm. And his wife and the mother of their kid is slaughtered for no rational reason. The attack on it was I forget the name of the band. Oh God, I'm sorry, but it was just like this American kind of like funky bluegrass-ish band.
Yeah, I remember that.
something of metal.
Was it Blues Traveler or something?
No, something of metal. And I apologize to them. I would check it, but anyway, it's in the book. It's correct in the book. But he writes a Facebook post that goes viral where it's like, you took my wife, but you cannot have my hate. I'm not going to spend my life hating you. You are not going to have me thinking about this. And he turns it into a book, and it's translated, and Renly Dennis is inspired by this book. And that's basically the message he gives to Spin Ghul in sentencing, which is like, I'm not going to spend my life thinking about you and what you took from me. I'm just not going to do it. And like, I was so moved when I heard the story, because I don't know that I'd be that glad. I'd probably just drink myself into oblivion. I mean, like, I don't think I would react that way. But just the humanity of just like regular folks really can touch you at times, and the response to some of the worst acts that anybody can commit. And like, John's a good example also of that. Like, John has been through the ringer with the CIA and everything, and dedicating his life to having rational, passionate advocacy and conversation about this topic. And it's just like, it makes you feel good at a time when not a lot makes you feel good anymore.
Yeah.
Jake, that's a great place to wrap the interview, I think. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's always great. I want to write books just so I can talk to you guys.
Well, you don't have to write a book to come talk to us anytime. Race Against Terror?
And it's coming out October 7th, yes?
Yes, October 7th, which happens to be the anniversary of the beginning of the war in Afghanistan.
Right.
Yeah,
that's when the bombs started falling.
Right, it is.
2001.
That's right.
Yes. So the 24th anniversary of that. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
All the best, Jake.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks. You too.
Buddy.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.